Hello and welcome to Mainly Menswear. My name is Dwayne McLeod and I am glad that you're here. When I started this YouTube channel, I mentioned briefly that many of the videos would involve what I call sewing for results. And today's video falls squarely within that camp. There are lots of times in sewing where you want to get it right the first time. And for me, one of those times is setting a sleeve into a jacket or a coat. And I cannot promise that these techniques are going to guarantee success for you every time, but I think that they will get you a little bit closer to getting that sleeve set perfectly the first time around. And I do want to credit my sewing friend Andrew in London who suggested this video. I've listed lots of the places where you can find him online below, but you will find him at sewandrew.com, and he also has a very jazzy new YouTube channel also called Sewandrew. So without further ado, we'll get down to setting a sleeve into a coat or a jacket with the hope of getting it in perfectly the first time around. The first step in this process is to reinforce the armholes, and this is done with strips of cross-grain muslin, and these strips are about an inch wide and 20 inches long. And what you will want to do is take your iron and you're going to press a bit of a curve into these pieces, and this is no doubt going to steam up the lens on my camera, but using your iron and some steam, you will just press a curve into these strips. And once that has been done, they will be basted into the armhole of the garment. After pressing the muslin strips into a curve, it's time to attach them to the actual armhole. In my case, I have a little hair canvas front in this jacket, and that is not included in the basting. So if you have a canvas in your garment, you want to just make sure that you've tucked that out of the way. You'll want to start the strip right around the point of the front notch, and using a diagonal stitch, you will just attach the muslin strip to your fashion fabric. Normally, I would be doing this with a cotton basting thread, but since I'm working on velveteen, and this would also apply to a velvet, you always run the risk of having your basting show in the final garment. It presses down the nap of the velveteen, and it's almost impossible to get that out. So one thing that I've learned working on this jacket is that if I'm going to baste, I baste using a silk thread, and my goal is to get the basting in and out as quickly as possible. So I'm just going to continue to baste this strip into position and try to get this sleeve inserted and get this basting out as quickly as I can. I'm also doing everything that I can to make sure that all of my basting is well within the seam allowance of this jacket, because I just don't want to run the risk of having my basting threads mar the outside of my velveteen. So I will just continue to baste this strip around the armhole, and I'm going to end at the underarm. So there'll be a short section, maybe 2 inches, 2.5 inches on the front of the jacket where there is no strip. And apparently this allows for forward movement of the sleeve. So once this is all in, we'll go ahead and start basting in the actual sleeve. Now it's actually time to put the sleeve into the armhole. The way I do this is I turn my garment inside out, and then with the sleeve right side out, I bring the sleeve up inside the garment and up into the armhole. And that way I'm able to work on this from inside the sleeve. I find that this is much easier. What I've already done, I've done some machine basting for the ease along the sleeve cap. And the next step is to actually baste the sleeve into the armhole. In my case, I'm doing this with a silk thread because of the fabric that I'm using. And these are tiny basting stitches about 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to go all around this sleeve. And while I'm doing this, I'm feeling the fabric underneath, and I'm sensing any catches that might happen. You want this to be completely smooth. I call this the one and done method. I just want to go one pass through the machine and have this sleeve sewn in perfectly without any catches. And by doing all of this basting, you will be able to achieve that. You will also be able to pull out all of these pins, which makes the process so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to baste around here, and then we're actually going to baste again. So I'll be back and show you how that step is done. After you have basted around once, you will want to baste around a second time, this time going between the spaces of your first line of basting. Essentially, you'll be going underneath your first line of basting and coming out, and in this way you will fill in the spaces here. And this is essentially locking these stitches in place. And I feel that all of this work is well worth the time. It doesn't take all that long to baste around an armhole. And if we can set the sleeve in one pass of the sewing machine, I feel that that is well worth the time and the effort to do this little bit of basting. So once I've been around twice, I'll take this to the machine and hope for the best. Okay, we are finally at the machine. If I have any advice when it comes to sewing a sleeve in, it's that don't be in a hurry and make sure you have your garment all positioned the way you want it. The amount of time spent actually sewing is so minimal. I like to spend more time just making sure everything is ready to go before I start. There's been a lot of fraying with this velveteen, so I have put a piece of painter's tape on my sewing machine bed just so that I can keep track of the seam allowance. It's really hard to see it where it's been so frayed. I usually start stitching at the underarm. I'm not sure why, but that's just what I usually do. And I am just going to very slowly stitch this sleeve on. It's not a race. And I stop periodically to readjust my material. You can also reach in underneath the sleeve from the left-hand side, and you can actually feel the body of the jacket underneath and sense if there's any folding going on there. And so right now I have my hand in under there, and I'm just going to continue to sew very slowly around here. Again, the goal, as I've always said, is one and done. And I'm hoping that this works out for this video. We sew in real time here at Mainly Menswear. This might work, it might not. But I'll come back and show you the finished product regardless of how it turns out. Well, I'm happy to announce that the sleeve went in without a hitch. I don't see any catches anywhere over the sleeve cap where it's been eased in. I do see a few places where I can see my basting thread, my silk basting thread. So at this stage, I want to get in and get all of that basting out as quickly as I can so that it doesn't leave any marks. And on the inside, I think we can see that the stitching is going through the reinforcement strip. That way there'll never be any stretching out here of our sleeve. Eventually, I'm going to be putting a small shoulder pad in this jacket and maybe a sleeve head. I haven't really decided yet, but I'm very happy with the way that this has turned out, and I hope that this has been helpful. I know that this type of sewing is not everybody's cup of tea, but if you're into making outerwear, if you're into making tailored garments, I hope that this has been helpful. It's not difficult. None of it is really difficult. It might take a little bit more time, but I think that you will be more than satisfied with your results. That's it for this little video. I wish you all happy sewing. I think that I may be back with another video with this jacket. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, take care, happy sewing, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.